Hello everyone, welcome to Study Capital YouTube platform. My name is Atul Mishra and I'm your mentor for CUT PG 2025 MA English Entrance Examination. In this video, we are going to talk about certain important books that you can read for your preparation for MA English Entrance Examination. Now, if you are here for the very first time, please you can subscribe this channel and press bell icon so that you'll get every information at hand. Now you know your syllabus is divided into certain units. In our last video, we have talked about different units and the things that you can read in those units in order to prepare for your entrance examination. The very first, very important unit of your syllabus is History of English Literature. When I say History of English Literature, primarily it means History of British English Literature, where you read which starts from Anglo-Saxon period to the postmodern period. Now it actually starts long back from 55 BC when there were original inhabitants living in England. After that there is Roman invasion, and then England was open to invasion, and then finally you have Anglo-Saxon Jutes coming and ruling over England. That's how Anglo-Saxon period, or what you call Old English period, starts. You see, there are multiple ways through the ages are divided. So there are ages named after the name of the king or queen. There are ages named after the important writer, and there are also ages named after the movement. For example, you have Elizabethan period, you have Victorian period. Based on the these names are basically given after the queen or queen ruling over at that particular time frame. Then you see there are age of Dryden, age of Pope, age of Samuel Johnson. So these names were given on the basis of the writer, important canonical writer writing during the time frame. There are also movements. Neoclassical period. Neoclassical is altogether a movement. Romanticism is also a movement. So you see there are multiple ways through which your ages are divided. You need to read about the historical background of the age, literary background of the age, literary movements associated with these ages, literary groups associated with these ages, important writers and their works, along with the major works, minor works, and the concept that they have perpetuated. So how you are going to do that? There are many ways. You can look at them from Wikipedia, every writer, the literary movements. So Wikipedia is available. But if you want to read a book, and book reading is very important because you find quotes, you find theories, you find concepts associated with the age. So book is a very important solution. At least one book from every unit it is suggested that you should be reading. There were, if you'll check last 2 years question paper, you will find there are directly quotes that you'll find in the books, and they have asked questions from there, beginning from Routledge or any other text that you can think of. So the first unit is British English Literature, basically History of British English Literature. And as you can see, there are many books that I have mentioned here. There is a book called History of English Literature by Edward Albert. There's a book called History of English Literature by David Deshe, which comes in 2 volumes. There's a book called History of English Literature by William J. Long, and then there is Routledge, there is Oxford anthology, there is Norton anthology, and there are many other anthologies available. Now you see the difference between the anthology and the book. You see when you read any anthology, for example Norton one or the Oxford one, you find it is divided in such a way that they talk about the writer, their works from a specific period. So you have a lot of information to gather from those anthologies. But when you read book like, for example, Routledge, you find the important quotes available to age, right? The language that has been used in Routledge is very interesting, and how every idea related to age is associated with the kind of writers who were writing during the period. So you see every age, their historical background, writers writing within it, everything you'll obviously not find in one book. But if you'll read, I will suggest you to read Routledge or David Deshe. David Deshe is very big book, so you can also read Edward Albert, any one of them, in order to understand how the narrative works. So you see, for example, I'll give you one example from Routledge. So when you'll read Routledge, especially the Victorian period, on probably after 4 pages, when you'll read about Victorian period, there is one quote that is given there from the novel called Hard Times, which is related to fact, right? So we see a lot of emphasis was given to facts, to scientific knowledge in the Victorian period. In order to make you understand that, the book suggests you a literary example, very important text by Dickens called Hard Times. So this is why these texts are very important for you. So for this unit you can use any of these books, any one at least, in order to first understand what getting information from those texts. Like when you read reader response theory, there are two ways of reading, right? There is aesthetic reading and there is efferent reading. Aesthetic reading is when you read it and you associate your emotions with it, you try to understand, you try to relate it, you stop and you give time to those things. This is what a book does to you. But at the same time there is efferent reading as well. When you get a lot of information, you are reading only to find information, and that is too very important for your entrance examination. So read any book from these suggested book, and you will find that it is going to surely help you as well. The another very important unit for your entrance examination is Indian writing in English. We only have 3 books related to history of Indian English literature, primarily in India. So you have one book by M.K. Naik, another book is by A.K. Malhotra, and the last one is by Iyengar. Only 3 books. What I will suggest you, first read the introduction of all these 3 books. Okay, why? Because they have added new unit within your syllabus, diaspora, Indian diaspora, and also history of Indian English literature. So how English is introduced within India, right, from 1600, and English, how it improves, how it became a language, what kind of status that it holds today in India, what is Macaulay's minute and the role of Macaulay minutes in removing Persian language from school, and all those things, what is Wood Dispatch, and then Indian Renaissance, the changes in Indian English writing, and the ages that you can locate. So you see all these 3 books. It is not advised obviously to read all of these 3 books. If you'll check last 2-3 years question paper of NET and try to find out the questions that they have asked, you will find that they have asked directly questions from A.K. Malhotra, quotes given there, the kind of suggestion that this particular book suggests you. But also when you read Iyengar's book, it's a very huge book, more than 1000 pages, but you find so many writers are being explained there individually, one by one, and then also the introduction. So when you the 20 pages introduction of all these 3 books, and you'll find it gives you kind of narratology, kind of movement, what happened. You read objective correlative, every object should be correlated with each other. A happened, then B happened, then C happened. So when you read the introduction of all these 3 books, you'll understand how how English is introduced within India, and how writers have used it. For example, how they were imitating the English writers in the beginning, what changes they have made in the middle, and the way we are using English in India within literature. So that that kind of development is very important to understand, along with obviously important writers and the text that they have written. So you need to read beginning from Toru Datta to contemporary writers, such as Arvind Adiga, and 2008 writing for which he was awarded Man Booker Prize. Even 2023, 2024, Anuradha Roy, who was recently awarded with Sahitya Academy Award. So maybe you'll not find every writer in these books because editions are old, but again you need to be aware about the old writers as well, canonical writers as well, Nizam Ezekiel, Kamla Das, Rabindranath Tagore, Salman Rushdie. There are many other writers that you can read about from these 3 books, any of these 3 books. I'll suggest you to read A.K. Malhotra, but Naik and Iyengar book is also a good book that you can read. Then the third unit, and which is related to literary terms, I'll suggest you to read a book by Abrahams, a glossary of literary terms. Any student who is preparing for PG English entrance examination, for NET entrance examination, or primarily if you're an English literature student, this is one book that you should start your journey with. This is the first book that you should be reading, because it takes you from one term to another term to another term, and gives you a lot of information. So you see, for example, if you are reading allegory, right, there are few terms that are given in your syllabus: allegory, dissociation of sensibility, association of sensibility, comedy, tragedy, metaphor, figure of speech, motive. These are certain terms given in your syllabus. When you'll go there, for example, if you'll read an entry of dissociation of sensibility from a glossary of literary terms, it will tell you about new criticism. It will tell you about other essays by T.S. Eliot. It will tell you about, it will suggest you to read about different terms by T.S. Eliot, essays, terms, and many more other things. When you'll read an entry of comedy or novel, for example, you'll find different types of novel, writers associated with these novels, and these are exactly those questions which they ask you in your entrance examination. So if you'll only read this book, around 20 to 25% questions that are going to be in your examination will be there from this particular book. So this is very important book, even more important than history of British English literature for your examination. Okay, there is one more edition, that is Penguin's edition available, but if you'll read the M.H. Abraham's one, it is going to be very beneficial for all of you. Okay, then as I mentioned, there was one unit for related to comparative literature, in which you also read world literature writers. There is one book called World Literature in Your Fist. You'll find British literature, it's more like an anthology where you find British literature as well, American literature as well, Australian literature as well, and many other countries and their writers. Why I am suggesting you this book? Because if you're not getting time to read history of British English literature, you will find every major authors, their text and their summary being explained in this book called World Literature in Your Fist. So this is like that book, one book where you can get every information. It is not complete. Again, I'll suggest you, it is not, it is not one book that you can read and you'll crack your CUET PG entrance examination, because there is no mention of translation studies here. You'll not find new events or such units that are available for in your examination. But again, this is one such text, one such book where you will find every major author from every country, including Britain, India, and other countries, and you can read about their famous text and the summary of those texts in this particular anthology. That's why this is very important book, edited by Prem Shankar Pandey. The YouTube PDF is available on Wikipedia. You can download and you can read about it. Okay, then there is one more unit called literary criticism in your syllabus. Now, Indian literary criticism and British literary criticism. In British literary criticism, it starts from Plato, it ends with I.A. Richards. Meanwhile, you have, for example, Plato, Aristotle, Horace, Longinus. Then you move to medieval ages, you have Virgil. In Elizabethan period, you have Philip Sidney. Then you have Ben Jonson. Then you have, for example, Dryden, Alexander Pope, and then Samuel Johnson, Wordsworth, Keats, Shelley, Coleridge, Thomas Love Peacock, Matthew Arnold, T.S. Eliot, I.A. Richards, and F.R. Lewis. These are few writers, and I am not mentioning them as a writer, as a critic I am mentioning here. So all these writers, for example, Matthew Arnold is also famous as a poet, and for example, T.S. Eliot is also famous as a poet, as a playwright, and I am discussing them as a part of literary criticism. So these writers, as a critic, the text that they have written, for example, if you only think of Dryden, there is essay of dramatic poesy that he has written in 1668. If you think of Philip Sidney, defense of poesy is there. If you think of Thomas Love Peacock, so there is 4 ages of poetry. If you think of Wordsworth, so his theory of poetic diction in the preface to lyrical ballad. If you think of Coleridge, there is Biographia Literaria. If you think of Matthew Arnold, there is a study of poetry. There is the text that he has written where he talks about the touchstone method. So all these writers, they have written certain critical text and propounded certain theories. This is also something that you need to read in literary criticism. So this book by Roy and Dwivedi is very helpful in that context. Remember, you also need to read Indian classical criticism as well. For example, Natya Shastra, Dhwani theory, Bharata, Patanjali, and many other writers, for which I have not suggested any book here for now. But the major questions, as I mentioned, from British literary criticism, it starts from Plato, ends with T.S. Eliot, I.A. Richards, and F.R. Lewis. For that part, you can read a book from Roy and Dwivedi. The another book that I have suggested is by Habib, but it's a very, very long book, more than 1,000 pages. I will not suggest you to read it for PG entrance examination, but later on when you will be preparing for NET examination, you can take help from this book as well. Now, for literary theory, as you know, there is one unit that is prescribed in your syllabus: structuralism, post-structuralism, psychoanalysis. Although psychoanalysis is not there in your syllabus, but there was one question last year, so you need to read about psychoanalysis as well. Or for example, formalism, new criticism, reader response theory. So there were questions from these theories, but they have not given it in your syllabus. As I've already explained the complete syllabus. You can watch the video later. But you see, structuralism, post-structuralism, feminism, queer theory, reader response theory, new historicism, these are very important literary theories that you need to read about, right? For your PG entrance examination, maybe not in detail, but the writers associated with these theories, the text that they have written, and the concepts that they have derived, these three very basic information from every unit. Yes, for example, if you are reading formalism, you need to know about metaphor and metonymy of Jacobson, foregrounding of Jacobson, six functions of language by Jacobson, defamiliarization by Slowski, morphology of folk tales by Vladimir Prop. These are some important concepts and works associated with formalism. If you are reading new criticism, you need to read about T.S. Eliot, I.A. Richards, F.R. Lewis in British literary criticism, and Imson as well. If you are reading American new criticism, you need to read about Clint Brooks, R.P. Warren, R.P. Wallach, as well as many other new critical writers, including Clint Brooks. So obviously Ransom. When you are reading structuralism, you need to read about, for example, Shashore, Lewis Strauss, as well as Roland Barthes, and how he is a bridge between structuralism and post-structuralism, and then Derrida, and then Yale critics of Derrida. Last year there was one question from one Marxist group called the Frankfurt School. They may ask you questions about a Yale critics who are followers of Derrida. How you are going to read about these people and the concepts as well as the books that they have written? For that you need to read at least one book by that you can see on screen. If you are a beginner, if you have no idea about literary theory, how it is different from literary criticism, first you can start with the introduction of beginning theory by Peter Berry. The book is also very interesting, very basic, I can say, and then you can move to P.K. Nair. Very short books, but I think beginning theory will give you enough data to understand the background, to understand the authors associated with it. I'll again suggest you, everything is not available on on these books. So what you need to do, you need to find out the writers, you need to find out the concepts, and then you can read them by your own using Wikipedia, using Google, or any other source. So that's why a book by Kalyani Velath or for example P.K. Nair and Peter Berry, they are very important. You can read any one of them. If you want a suggestion from me, you can start with beginning theory. There was one question that they have asked in 2022 entrance examination, a maxim called "Make It New" by Ezra Pound. When you will read the introduction of beginning theory, there is a mention of Ezra Pound's definition of literature. There is mention of the maxim called "Make It New," and explanation given within the introduction, and the question was directly asked for this from this particular book. So you can give a read. It's a very interesting book. Now these are few important units available on your in your syllabus. There is one more unit called literary awards. So for that there is no book available, although you will find some information in the word literature book that I have shared with all of you. But what you need to do, you need to find out few things that I have mentioned. For example, Wikipedia. So you can only search Sahitya Academy Award and in English and recipient, and you will find a list, and then you can explore those writers, their works, right? For example, you cannot read more 1,000 books. So what you can do, you can read summaries of major text. For that you can use Spark Notes, Britannica, LitChart, and any other source available online. Now you also need to read poems, right? They have asked questions related to poems. For example, if I say poetry is in pity, kahan ki line hai? Ya for example, I say poetry makes nothing happen, kahan ki line hai? These are lines from famous poetries, and they have asked in your examination, right? In GATE entrance examination, they have asked about this line called "Poetry makes nothing happen," which is a part of in memory of W.B. Yeats, written by W.H. Auden. When I say poetry is in pity, it is from preface from a very important writer called Wilfred Owen, who is a part of war poetry. So that means you'll not get everything in the books, but when you'll read poems from important writers, you can think about writers like that are prescribed in your universities in your graduation. So you read Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. You have to read poems like The Second Coming, Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold, and write poems by Philip Larkin, poems by Ted Hughes, poems by Ezra Pound, and famous canonical writers. You can use Poetry Foundation for that. So and also if you are having any issues related to understand these things, there is one series available on YouTube on our channel called For the Love of Books. We have covered, there are around 25 videos where we have covered miscellaneous topics, important topics related to your entrance examination. So you can use YouTube as well. There are many other channels who are also teaching. I'm not saying that you should only be taking our classes. If you want to avail, because there's a lot of information available on YouTube, you try to think about it, just search it and you will find a lot of videos as well as concepts available on YouTube. So you can search there, you can watch videos on our channel as well, or many other sources available on YouTube. This is all about syllabus and the important books. I hope you like the video, and we'll meet in some other video where we'll discuss important things related to your CUT PG entrance examination. Thank you so much.